What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we are going to continue our coverage over different Ultimate stories that I did not cover back in the past. So for example, I want to cover Ultimate Elektra. This was a 5-part miniseries that came out right after Ultimate Daredevil and Elektra. And technically, this is a sequel to that story arc right there. You see, when it came to Ultimate Marvel in the early days, they were trying their best to establish what these characters are going to be like in the Ultimate Marvel universe. Ultimate Spider-Man, X-Men, Fantastic Four, The Ultimates, Volume 1 and Volume 2, and even Ultimate Iron Man had 2 volumes, even though those books are not canon. But we also got 2 books for Elektra and Daredevil. Now, I should say that this is really more a Elektra story, and Daredevil is kind of like a footnote. He's there, but he's not really important. And really, even the last book, when it came to Ultimate Daredevil and Elektra, he was also not really as important like she was. And so I kind of see why they changed the second book just into Ultimate Elektra, and that is it. But like I said, this is a sequel to that first book we covered. And so to begin today's video, we do pick up on May 15th. Now, we actually pick up with Dimitri. Dimitri is the father to Elektra, and we see him having a meeting with Leander and Paul, his 2 cousins. Now, his 2 cousins are unfortunately mobsters, but this is Dimitri coming to them for help. And the reason why, because, well, his company was completely burned down in the last video in Ultimate Daredevil and Elektra. And so because his building was burned down, the insurance does not believe it was actually arson. They believe he did it on purpose. And so unfortunately, he will not be able to get any money to reopen his business at all. And so you have his 2 cousins kind of offering to help out, but the problem is he knows that they have their hands in some illegal activities. But now we jump over to May 21st. We actually pick up with Matt Murdock trying to move on with his life because, well, Elektra no longer goes to university. And so while you have Matt walking around, he is confronted by Foggy Nelson. Now, this is Foggy informing Matt that him and Bo Foggy have basically got into their internship in ESL. Ecker, Summers, and Lyle. Now, of course, they have to meet their actual mentors, but they are now able to begin their internship as lawyers. And really, the next page, we are able to meet the mentor for Matt Murdock for today's video. Really, the mentor for his internship, and that's really it. But that will be Walter Savage. And really, this page is showing us how great of a lawyer he is, and he's really able to help us clients get out of tight situations. And now we jump forward to May 25th, where we do pick up with Elektra and her father in Queens, New York, where we do learn that after he had lost his business and his home thanks to the fire, well, they had no choice but to move in with his sister, Elektra's aunt, and that would be Irene. But this section is really more telling us that Dimitri had actually accepted the offer of Leander and Paul. So they're going to give him some money to help him reopen his business, even though we already know that this is not going to go so well. But we can go ahead and shift our focus back over to Matt Murdock because this is Matt, like I said earlier, really trying to move on with his life with the idea of no longer being with Elektra. But the problem is, Foggy can tell that it really does bother Matt that he is not able to spend time with Elektra. And really, for Foggy, he does inform Matt that she's going through a lot. Apparently, he had talked to Phoebe, her best friend, and she had heard that Elektra and her father are going through a lot of debt at the moment and a lot of other problems as well. And so this is Matt kind of wondering that maybe he should just stop by and try to have a conversation with Elektra to kind of help her out some things. Move forward to June 8th, and we see that Dimitri is able to get his business back open. But here comes the big problem though. You see, he's missing a lot of equipment. Leander and Paul only gave him 1 washer and 1 dryer, and that's really it. Now, for Dimitri, he's kind of wondering what in the world is going on. But for Leander, he said, yeah, you're going to run a business here, but you're not going to be that busy as you think you are going to, kind of hinting at the idea that this building is going to be used in some illegal activities of Leander and Paul. Now, for Dimitri, he's also being introduced to Mr. Colon, and Mr. Colon is going to be very important for this entire book. But you did have Dimitri go home, and you can tell with Elektra that she's very upset that her father is now technically trapped in some kind of illegal operation thanks to their cousins. And she's kind of wondering if he's able to give the money back to their cousins, but he tells them no. They're the kind of people that you just don't turn down their money or try to give the money back to them, because most likely they will kill you off. Now, on June 17th, we do see that Leander's on a call with someone on the phone, and really that's his boss. Now, we're going to learn who that boss is down the road later on in this video. Just know it is a powerful character in the world of Marvel Comics. But you didn't have Mr. Colon come in to kind of do some booking stuff for Leander, and he has to get some things signed. But Leander gets very upset that Colon had technically ruined the phone conversation. And so you have Leander say, if you do that again, I am going to make you pay for your mistakes. And so for Mr. Colon, that was the final straw, and he walks away. But now we have to jump over to Elektra at the dojo, and she's trying to get a training session in. But while doing that, you have Matt Murdock stop by. Now, when Matt Murdock stops by, it's really more of Matt saying like, hey, you know, I came here because I heard you're going through some things. But let's not forget that Elektra does not really like Matt at all. And it's all because the idea that they don't believe in the same thing when it comes to how justice should be served. You see, in our last video, there was a character known as Calvin, and Calvin had assaulted one of the friends of Elektra, and she believed the man should go ahead and be killed off because that guy would be arrested, but the law would then back off on him and kind of show the law is very corrupt. But for Matt Murdock, he still believes in the American law, and so for him it's kind of like, no, we cannot kill. Killing is completely wrong. And so because of that, these two characters are at odds with one another. There is another reason why, but I'll put that on the back burner for now. Either way, you have Elektra kind of say like, hey, I don't want you here. I don't want your help. And no, I don't need anyone to talk to. Just go away. And well, Matt does go away. Now, by July 12th, we do see that Mr. Colon is having a meeting with the district attorney and also Mr. Savage, the lawyer who's going to be the mentor for Matt Murdock in his internship. But apparently this is Mr. Colon saying, you know what? I am officially done working for Leander and Paul. And so he actually wants to go out of his way to expose all their operations, including their big boss. But now we have to jump over to Elektra. Now, this is Elektra meeting up with Leander and Paul. She wants to talk to her cousins about the idea of getting her father out of their debt, because right now her father is just mentally and physically drained, really more mentally drained than physically. And she also knows the man hates the idea of being part of some illegal operation with her cousins, but they tell her no and go away. And the reason why, because they're meeting up with their boss. Now for Elektra, this lady does not want to leave at all. And so she tries her best to stand her ground, but the problem is, well, somebody comes in behind her, and that would be the Kingpin. Now we kind of find out that Kingpin, Leander, and Paul are working together, but they're all trying to get rid of Mr. Colon. And the reason why, because his ledger and his word can actually bring down the entire operation. So we do learn that Leander and Paul had hired some mercenaries to take out Mr. Colon at the law firm, the office of Mr. Savage. But the thing is, they don't know that Matt Murdock had just walked in. And so most likely, he'll do his best to protect the innocent people. But while being there, the wall does get blown open and you have the mercenaries move in to hopefully kill off Mr. Colon. And so as we dive into the second chapter, we do pick up with Elektra kind of telling us that she has no idea who the Kingpin is. And honestly, she does not care because her main goal right now is to work out a deal with Leander and Paul. But they're trying to tell her like, hey, this man is our boss and you have to go. And they were able to kick her out. Now, we do learn here that the Kingpin, Leander, and Paul, they are working together, yes, but we also learn why they all want Mr. Colin dead. Because right now, he is trying to talk to the district attorney and Walter Savage to bring down all their operations. But also, that ledger contains all the evidence the district attorney needs to bring down all three of them. And so you have the Kingpin say, I'm hoping that the mercenaries you hired can actually do their job correctly and actually kill off Mr. Colin. Except Leander, Paul, and the Kingpin have no idea that Matt Murdock is inside there. Really, they have no idea who Matt is, but because Matt was there and the lights go out, Matt was able to work in the shadows to take out all the different mercenaries who came in there to kill off Mr. Colin. And so while he was able to do that, well, they had a getaway driver outside waiting for them. The mercenaries did. And the driver realized that the cops are showing up left and right, and he has to get the heck out of there. But he now knows that the rest of the mercenaries had failed at their assignment. And so he calls Leander and Paul and say, hey, listen, I want to tell you, your guys failed. They were not able to take out Mr. Colin at all. Now, the following day, we do see Elektra having lunch with her best friend Phoebe. Now, we had talked about this character before. Phoebe was Elektra's dorm mate in the last story. And even though Elektra no longer goes to university, they were able to keep their friendship strong. But this is Elektra kind of telling Phoebe that she was able to follow the Kingpin all the way back to his home base. And she kind of realized that the Kingpin must be a very powerful man, which is a problem because if Leander and Paul are working for the Kingpin and her father works for Leander and Paul, then he's also involved in the mess of the Kingpin as well. And so for Elektra, her main goal right now is to find a job to help her father get out of the debt he owes to Leander and Paul. And really, speaking of Leander and Paul, we do see the two characters right now trying to think of a new game plan on how they're going to get rid of Mr. Colin. The problem is he's now been protected by, well, police and also the district attorney. They're putting him in a safe house. But they do realize there is a way to get to him, and this way is going to involve Elektra. But before we are able to learn what their plan is, we jump over to Matt Murdock. Now, this is Matt just working his internship at the office of Walter Savage law firm. But while being there, he overhears about the case of Elektra's family, her cousins, Leander and also Paul, but also, of course, her father as well. And so for Matt Murdock, he realized there's something going on here. What is happening to Elektra? Really, as we jump over to Elektra, we see her trying to get a job. But the problem is nobody wants to hire her. And the reason why? Because she is a college dropout. And so, unfortunately, she cannot get a job. But now, while she's walking around, she's then confronted by her cousin Leander, who says, hey, I have a job for you. And if you are able, to pull this job off, then your father's debt is completely forgiven. And so you have Elektra actually get in the car with Leander to talk about this whole deal. Now we do learn what the actual deal is, so let me explain. So for Elektra, she's going to pretend to be a prostitute. And the reason why, because, well, Mr. Colin loves his ladies. He loves his prostitutes. And so it's the best way to get to him. Now currently, he's at a safe house and he's being watched from a different apartment building across the street by a bunch of police officers. And so when Elektra walks in, well, at first she does her job to keep him busy, but then her focus changed over to the ledger to hopefully get rid of it, to hopefully get the job done. Now, while she's trying to do that, and you have Colin somewhere else in the apartment, in the other apartment building, the police officers are all killed off by a mysterious officer. Now, that mysterious officer does go after Mr. Colin as well, right when he sees Elektra going after the ledger. Now we kind of find out who had just killed off Mr. Colin. It's no other than Ultimate Bullseye, making his first appearance in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. And so as we get into the third chapter, we actually see Bullseye trying to find Elektra because he was able to realize that Mr. Colin was not alone by himself, that there was someone else in the room, and of course, that would be Elektra. And so he's trying his best to find her, but unfortunately for himself, he does get confronted by a real officer who's trying to arrest Bullseye, which honestly is a big mistake. Now, we see Matt Murdock breaking into the office at night of Walter Savage, and the reason why, because he wants to gather more information about Elektra and her family. Now, with him doing that, even though the ledger has now been destroyed, and even though Mr. Colin has been killed off, well, you see, Savage kept tapes that recorded conversation he had with Mr. Colin, and those tapes could be used as a way to bring down the Kingpin, to bring down Leander, to bring down Paul, and honestly, anybody else who has connections to the Kingpin. Now, you do have Bullseye being able to find Elektra, and you do have the two characters being able to fight against each other. Now, the officer who did walk in earlier, yeah, he's dead, been killed off. But getting over to Bullseye, he does try to kill off Elektra, but she's a well-trained fighter, so she's able to defend herself. Now, after doing that, he then hears the cops coming, and he does not want to be here when they get here. And so you have Bullseye letting Elektra actually leave. Now, once she does leave, for Bullseye, for some reason, something about her has very intrigued him to the point where he's hoping to see her again. Now, for Walter, he does get word about what happened to Colin. And so now he's kind of like, this does change everything, but he also tells the person who called him to call the district attorney, to also inform the district attorney that, hey, Mr. Colin has been killed off. But getting back over to Elektra, we see her running over to her aunt's house. Now, when she does get inside, she is confronted by her father, and he wants to know what in the world is going on. 1, she's coming home late. 2, she's dressed like a prostitute. And 3, there's blood on her. Now, she tries her best to actually tell her father everything he can know, but the problem is there's a knock on the door. It's the police department, because they saw somebody run out the apartment building, and they follow her all the way over to her aunt's house. But the problem is they have no idea it was a woman or a man. And so when you have Dimitri open the door up and there's now blood on him thanks to Elektra, you have the cops believe that it was him who had killed off Mr. Colin, and so they arrest him. Now, the following day, July 29, we do pick up with Bullseye, and we do learn that it was Bullseye who called the cops to the home to Elektra to kind of say that there's a suspect who had killed off Mr. Colin hiding in that apartment. Now, his goal was to get rid of her, but unfortunately, her father got arrested instead, and he has no idea about that part yet. Now, getting back over to Walter Savage, we see him having a meeting with the district attorney. And with the attorney, he wants the tapes that Mr. Savage has. But for some reason, he does not want to hand over the tapes just yet. Now, we're not told exactly why, but the district attorney is very annoyed about the idea that Walter would not hand over those tapes that can bring down the Kingpin and Leander and also Paul as well. Now, for Dimitri, the father to Elektra, he has been arrested, and right now he's, well, going through a whole interrogation process. Now, when it comes to Dimitri, he's trying his best to stay silent, but the police officers are really annoyed by him, and so they're going to beat him until they are able to get an answer out of him that they actually like. But now we're able to jump over to Walter. Now we see that Walter is having a meeting with the Kingpin. Now this section right here is really important because we do learn that apparently Walter had betrayed Colin not once but twice. Now we're not technically told how or the reason why, but we do see that Walter is telling the Kingpin that he does have a copy of the ledger and he does plan on using it as a way to bring the Kingpin down. And so he tells the Kingpin, if you want to be able to, keep this ledger away from the public, well, you're going to have to pay me $10 million. And so you have the guys walk away until the deal could possibly get finished. Now, you do have Elektra go see her two cousins, Leander and Paul. Now, for Elektra, she's definitely ticked off. And the reason why, because she believes that it was Leander who had sent in the assassin to kill off Mr. Colin, not realizing that it was actually the Kingpin who sent the assassin to clean up their mess. But now, because she was able to get away, she's now a witness. And so because of that, it's Leander saying, listen, if your dad's in jail, it's because you were supposed to be in jail. But also, if you were able to get away, that means you are a witness that I have to take care of. We got to wrap up loose ends. And even though we're family, I can't have you around because the Kingpin will find out about you and then kill me to get to you. And so you have Leander say it's time for you to die. But luckily for Elektra, Matt Murdock was there. He crashed through the ceiling, taking out all the guys who were going to kill off Elektra. But now him and Elektra can now question Leander for more information about the assassin that Kingpin has sent. And so as we dive into the fourth chapter, we do pick up with Matt Murdock and Elektra pretending that they're having an argument about the idea of torturing Leander. And the reason why, because when Leander wakes up, he overhears that they are actually talking about torturing him to get the information out of him to figure out who was the assassin that the Kingpin had sent. And so you have Elektra leave to pretend that she is supposedly going to go get some, gear to begin the torturing. And so once she leaves, he freaks out and tells Matt everything. So, hey, listen, I know who the assassin is. His name is Poindexter. Now, I don't know where he lives, but I do know he is from Chicago. But I know there's a body shop nearby where he goes to get his contracts from. So you go there, most likely you'll find a way to find him. And so with that information, you have Matt Murdock and Elektra leave. But before they're able to go after Poindexter, of course, Bullseye, they have to sit down, kind of explain why Matt Murdock is helping her out for. And he says parallel lines. Like this whole idea of the Kingpin, Poindexter, the ledger, we both need it, but we're not doing this for each other. You see, you need that ledger to prove your dad is innocent, to get him out of prison. I need the ledger to bring down all the bad people whose names are inside that ledger. We can use that for our own goals. After that, we can try to sit down and see if we are able to get back together. And so they agree and they get ready to go find Poindexter. Now, for Walter Savage, he does call up the Kingpin and tells the Kingpin, like, hey, we're going to meet here at the courthouse because there's no way I will allow you to take me somewhere else so that you can easily kill me. Like, I want to make sure I get the ledger over to you, but I also get that $10 million. And so you have the Kingpin agree to meet at this courthouse, but in reality, it's the Kingpin saying, yeah, I'll meet you there, but it's not going to be to get the money or get the ledger. I'm going to kill you. And so he's telling his guys to get a message over to Poindexter, which is Bullseye. But getting back over to Matt Murdock, he does arrive at the body shop where apparently Bullseye gets his contracts from. Anytime someone's to hire him, they send a message over to the body shop and then give that message over to Bullseye. And so you have Matt Murdock go inside and beat the guys down inside there to figure out where Poindexter actually lives. And you then have one of the guys say, listen, he's staying in a nearby hotel, but guess what? I believe he'll be able to kill you off. So I don't mind really sharing that information over to you. Now we do get a picture where we see Elektra grabbing some weapons to use against Bullseye. But for me, it kind of shows that this is Elektra actually talking about the idea of killing off Bullseye, because Matt Murdock, his whole idea is to just take down Bullseye, let him get arrested, and let the law take care of him. But for Elektra, it kind of shows that she might take it the next step because she believes the law does not work in the American system. Now we do get a page that really does show us that you have Walter getting the ledger and getting ready to leave for his meeting with the Kingpin, not knowing that, well, he's going to meet Bullseye instead. Now for Bullseye, he's also getting ready to leave his hotel. So it kind of tells us that, hey, you know, Elektra and Matt Murdock are going to be a tad bit too late when it comes to finding Poindexter, Bullseye, at his hotel. Now, the ending of this chapter is pretty wild, so let me explain. So you have Poindexter being able to get past the metal detectors. Now, for Elektra, she had to find a different way inside the courthouse so that she's able to avoid the metal detectors. But you have Matt Murdock go inside to hopefully find Bullseye, or to at least find Walter and get him the heck out of there. But the problem is Walter is confronted by Bullseye, who does begin trying to kill him. Now, you do have Matt Murdock there trying his best to fight against Bullseye by himself, but the problem is Bullseye is a very well-trained fighter. And even though Matt is also well-trained, he's not up there with Bullseye. Now, you have Elektra also jump in as well, but it kind of shows that maybe she is on his level, but not there just yet, because you have Bullseye being able to take down both Matt and Elektra, take one of her weapons and use that weapon as a way to kill off Walter. Now, he does grab Walter's suitcase, believing the ledger is actually inside a suitcase, and he runs off with it. But he had no idea that Walter actually kept a copy of the ledger taped on his back. And so you have Matt and also Elektra, search the dead body to find the ledger. And when they do, you have Elektra grab the ledger and she punches Matt to knock him out. And of course, she leaves with the ledger. Now, we have no idea right now what she's going to do with the ledger, but it kind of shows that she had just betrayed Matt Murdock. And so now we dive into the final chapter. Now, we see Poindexter going over to Wilson Fisk saying like, hey man, I did the job. I was able to kill off the lawyer, but also get the suitcase. The problem is the ledger is not inside a suitcase at all. So for Poindexter, he had basically failed. And so you have Kingpin say, hey, I'm gonna need everybody to work their hardest to find this girl, to find that ledger. Poindexter, you're not going anywhere at all, because to me, you're basically useless. But now we see Elektra paying a visit over to her father in prison. Now, when she arrives, it's her telling her father that she is trying to fix everything, that she wants to make things better for her and for him, to get him out of prison, to make their lives normal again. But the problem is, he knows if she tries anything, that things are only going to get worse for her. And so he tells his daughter, just leave it alone. Like, I'm okay in here. Go live a normal life without me. But she can't do that because she blames herself for what happened to her father. Let me explain. So in our last video, Ultimate Daredevil and Elektra, there was a character known as Calvin. Now, Calvin was going around assaulting women. And of course, one of the girls he did assault was a close friend to Elektra. Her name was Melissa. And so for Elektra, she tried to get rid of Calvin by using the legal system. But the problem is, the the law was not helping her out. And so for Calvin, he hires some guys to go ahead and burn down her father's business. And so she blames herself, saying that if she left Calvin alone, her dad's shop would have never got burned down. And then he would have never make a deal with Leander or be involved with the Kingpin. Now, all this mess wouldn't have happened if she had not messed with Calvin. She's blaming herself. And so that is why she's trying to fix everything for her father. Now, we do see some of the gangsters beating up on Leander to hopefully find Elektra. Now, at first, this is Leander trying his best to protect his cousin. He does not want to see her get hurt. But the problem is, they're now saying they're going to remove a certain body part that he cares so much for. So he says, you know what? I think she could most likely be at her father's shop or her aunt's apartment. Either way, she's at one of those places. And so the thugs leave and Leander gets the chance to live. And Leander was right, because we do see Elektra at her father's shop. Now, she is putting together some stuff that she's going to use to help her bring down the Kingpin, or to hopefully force the Kingpin to help her. Either way, while she's working on that, you have the thugs walk into her father's shop to look for her. But she was able to hide, and so of course they believe that she is not there, and they now move on to the next location, which is her aunt's house. Now we see Matt Murdock going over to the prison to pay a visit over to Dimitri, the father of Elektra. Now this is Matt hoping that Dimitri would be able to help Matt find Elektra, except Dimitri knows everything about Matt and Elektra. He knows that they had dated. He knows they had broken up. He knows that Matt had apparently hurt Elektra in some kind of way. And so for Dimitri, he does not really trust Matt at all. But this is Matt saying, I know and you know, when it comes to Elektra, when she tries to make things work for herself or other people around her, sometimes the moves she makes are completely reckless and they make things worse for her and the people around her. And so you have Dimitri tell Matt where he can find Elektra or what she is up to. And so now we can jump over to Elektra. Now, for Elektra, we do see that she called her friend Phoebe in once again. And we see Phoebe being a distraction so that Elektra is able to take down the guards, so that she's able to get inside the elevator that goes up to Kingpin's penthouse. And so this is her going to Kingpin and saying, hey, I am here to return the ledger, but I'm not just gonna hand it over to you so easily. I came here with a request. So here's the ledger, but you're now gonna have to listen to me. See, you have Elektra tell the Kingpin that with this paper copy of the ledger, Kingpin is able to remove certain pages to hide certain kinds of information. So for example, if the Kingpin can remove a page where it basically say Dimitri was part of the operation of Leander, Kingpin, also Paul, then that would show that her father was completely innocent. But also, she wants the Kingpin to use his power to get the charges dropped on her father to get him out of prison. And so for the Kingpin, he's kind of like, yeah, I can remove some pages to kind of show your father is innocent, but you're also talking about the idea of getting some charges dropped. Okay, you know what? I can do that for you. But here's the catch. You gotta take someone down for me. You see, I'm gonna have you fight against Bullseye because I need somebody to take the fall, your father or Bullseye. And so she has to take down Bullseye to hopefully free her father. Now, at first, when it comes to their battle, they're pretty even with one another. Like, you're left to believe that Elektra might actually lose. But let's not forget that she came prepared. You see, back at the shop, she did create some kind of toxin to kind of use against Bullseye. And she put that toxin inside a bullet. And so when she shot it at Bullseye, it cut off his airflow, began to make him choke, and so he was easily defeated by Elektra at the very end of their battle. And so for the Kingpin, he has no choice. He has to go ahead and do what Elektra asked him to do. And he agrees, but he says, just in case, you are looking for a new job, I may be looking for a new right-hand man, kind of hinting at the idea of Elektra joining the Kingpin side, like we saw in Ultimate Spider-Man. Now, the ending of this book is really more the idea of leaving the door open for other writers in the Ultimate Marvel universe to do their thing with Elektra. Unfortunately, only Brian Michael Bendis used the character in Spider-Man, and even then, he didn't use her in a way where it's kind of like, oh my god, I really do like the character a lot. No. Like, these two books did a great job setting her up, and unfortunately, nobody did anything else with her in the Ultimate Marvel universe. Either way, when it comes to Ultimate Daredevil, he does find Bullseye tied to a chair, and he was handed over to the police, and Dimitri was able to get out of prison. But Matt Murdock learned something else when it came to the deal that Dimitri had made with Leander a while back. Now, the ending of this book for me personally is pretty wild because you have Elektra just minding her business at the dojo, except she's then confronted by Matt Murdock. Now, she's cold towards Matt, but this is Matt saying, I came here to tell you what I had just learned. You see, what you did was reckless. You went out of your way to make a deal with the Kingpin, and you did not have to do that at all. You see, Matt Murdock went down to City Hall and he pulled out some papers and he realized that Dimitri, her father, gave his shop over to Leander as a gift, which means the entire shop was in Leander's name. Dimitri no longer had any shop under his name at all, and so the murder charges that were put on him would have most likely dropped if she had just waited. But unfortunately, she went out of her way to make a deal with the Kingpin to get her father out. But now she's stuck with the Kingpin. And then Matt just walks away. And so these two characters don't really cross paths again, like, you know, in a big way until Ultimate Spider-Man. Even then, though, it's kind of small. But yeah, this is the end of this book. So guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. Also, if you have any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.